there, and welcome back to Reading Rule, y'all. I'm Dr. Shay Parton, and this is our second video on Jeff Zentner's recent book, In the Wild Light, where I'll do a little mini analysis of how place features and functions in the book. So as a rural out-migrant myself, if you're not familiar with that term, see the description below for more resources on that. One of the things that was really exciting for me about this book was to see how Zentner's characters experienced and processed their own out-migration. One of the things that's so powerful about books that serve as mirrors for our own experiences is the way that they invite us to consider our own experiences through new and or different light. I realize that that's kind of punny, given the book's title, but I'm rolling with it. We all know that mirrors in changing rooms, for example, in dressing rooms, in department stores, seem and feel horrible because of the lighting, right? Those fluorescent bulbs are just so harsh and they expose all of your imperfections. So how the mirror reflects our experiences is so dependent on where it is and what the light looks like. Which again is a fitting metaphor for a book titled In the Wild Light, I think. So even though Cash and Delaney's experiences are similar to mine in their out-migration, they're also different enough that using them to reflect my experiences illuminates areas of those experiences that I hadn't thought about before. Which is why making sure that rural and rural out-migrant readers have mirrors of their own experiences is so important. Zentner is a master at both painting a place and showing how it shapes people's experiences in the world. All throughout the text, there are brief and beautifully written depictions of Cash and Delaney's home place, for example, in ways where place reflects the experiences of the folks who live there. So on page 5, Zentner writes, "The early July sun blazes like bonfire light on the hills behind the Dairy Queen. They're a soft green, as if painted in watercolor. Gleaming soapsud clouds tower behind them. Delaney told me once that the mountains of East Tennessee are among the oldest in the world, but time has beaten them down." Sounds about right. So the sort of beaten down nature of the mountains then reflecting the sort of beaten down nature of the people who live there, including Cash and Delaney's experiences. He also depicts place and its connection to politics. He writes on page 25, "Papa gets lonely. Our house is on a hill overlooking the road, woods all around. He sits out on our front porch hoping someone driving by will stop in and shoot the breeze for a little while. It happens rarely now for a few reasons. Many of those reasons that Zentner goes on to list have to do with Cash's papa's support of the LGBTQ community. And so in this way, the sort of isolation of their home and the fact that folks aren't stopping by is deeply connected to the sort of political values of Cash's papa. He also writes about place in a way that his characters embody it. There's an embodiment of and a sensory experience with place that feels really important. On page 48, he writes, "It's a lie that water is odorless. Water smells like water. The way wind smells like wind and dirt smells like dirt. The mossy metallic fragrance of the river wafts around us in the syrupy humidity, mixing with the flinty scent of wet stone and the yeasty tang of mud. The sun bakes the river water into our clothes, making them stiff and onto our skin, leaving a taut film that feels like dried tears." So, knowing place through our senses and even the way that it makes our skin feel, like there's an embodiment of place here that I think is really important, and that readers who have experienced these sensory details will understand in a way that folks who live in a desert area that also happens to be rural may not. And so thinking about how the way we experience the natural world around us and how that impacts the way that we read, the way that authors describe places, is also a really important thing to consider when we are reading books. So understanding what's described in these quotes can make for a deeper understanding of Cash and Delaney's home and their experience as residents there. And regardless of where we're from, we're all going to read these descriptions through our own experiences or inexperiences of those things. So when Cash and Delaney out-migrate to Middleford Academy, a wealthy sort of boarding school in Connecticut, we begin to see how that home place has shaped both how they see themselves outside of that town and how they understand others to see them. So when they first get there, Cash and Delaney are fixing to have an argument just after arriving. Cash says to Delaney, "Calm down. This how you want to arrive? Acting like a couple of hillbillies arguing on the front lawn? First damn day? Shit. Should I take off my shirt? Get some deputies down here to stand between us?" So Cash here pointing to an understanding of how the other folks who attend Middleford and their parents who are dropping these, the kids off there, how they will see and interpret the way that Cash and Delaney are interacting with one another. But Delaney doesn't care. After, in between some back and forth, Delaney gets in Cash's face and says, "My problem is your little aw shucks act makes us both look stupid. It makes me look like some nepotistic hillbilly mayor who makes her brother-in-law chief of police. It makes you look like someone who's willing to ride my coattails and take something you didn't earn. That what you want?" That's on page 101. So in this argument, both Cash and Delaney show an acute awareness of how they might look to other people, especially the kind of people who are moving their kids into Middleford Academy. Arguing likely would not have come with the same apprehensions if they were still in their small East Tennessee town. But because they weren't, how they were viewed by others felt incredibly important to them. It also seems to point to the fact that they don't consider themselves hillbillies necessarily, and may have ingested some of the dominant narratives about folks from where they're from, some of the stereotypes about them. But I'm still working through that, and I may talk about that more in the next video. So Cash and Delaney's travel across their rural working class backgrounds and the affluence of Middleford makes for a really interesting consideration of how we position ourselves and how we position others in particular places. And that's one of the many things that I loved about this book and that I love about what Zentner does in his books. There's such a wealth of opportunity to think about and analyze how place shapes culture, and opportunity, and linguistic practice, language practice, who we are, and how we know the world, plus how the world knows us. And the writing is just gorgeous. So I hope this gives you all an idea of how students can approach analysis of place in their reading of this book and really any other book they pick up. Join me next week where I'll give a more in-depth personal reaction to the book as a rural reader. But until then, thanks for stopping by. Y'all come back now, would ya?